Oh, okay. I think we're connected now. Had a little usual hiccups with the YouTube, but I managed to get on. Okay, so here we go. I'll just start right away because we're already late. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, so we're doing a series on the Girimananda Sutta, which is all about perception. And there's sanya, and there's 10 perceptions that are to be cultivated. Uh, so, one, we're going to do the perception of abandonment, pahana, today. But I'd like to make a preliminary remark about perception in general, sanya. Um, this sutta treats sanya as an active quality, something that can be cultivated, and this is something we can easily overlook. Our perceptions are part of our mental equipment that is not entirely passive. We can train our perceptions, and we've looked at a few ways of that this sutta talks about that. Uh, there's a there's a saying in Tibetan Buddhism: "As a thing is viewed, so it appears." So if we can cultivate certain skillful ways of perceiving, then our experience of the world shifts in subtle ways, and we can become more attuned to the Dhamma, and we can grow spiritually. And we can reduce our suffering. Now, a certain amount of our suffering comes from perception because we perceive things to be unpleasant, then they are and they are felt as unpleasant. So today's topic is the perception of abandonment, pahana. Now, this is the same verb used in the I think they call it the optative sense is pahataba in the formula of the second noble truth. In the clause where the Buddha says what are we to do with the second noble truth, which is the truth of tanha or craving, he says this is to be abandoned. Pahataba. So it's a central part of the Buddha's teaching, the idea of abandonment. Sometimes we use the term letting go for the same thing. I think that there's a small problem with the phrase letting go, because if you let something go, it means you've held it in the first place. Abandonment is more like not picking it up in the first place, not taking ownership of unskillful mental formations. And the sutta singles out thoughts of desire, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. So, we're admonished to abandon them, if not to allow them to arise in the first place, and if they do arise, to not take hold of them, to just let them go, just let them pass through and be gone and be done. the emphasis in this sutta is on cultivating perception. So we have to train ourselves to develop the perception of abandonment, which means that when unskillful thoughts arise, we perceive them immediately as unskillful and to be abandoned. And we perceive the act of abandonment. We're aware, we see it, that the mind is not, we see the negative, we see that the mind is not going there. We don't encourage it, we don't pick it up, we don't take an interest in it. We just let it dissolve. And this comes from perceiving those thought forms in this way, not to perceive them as something interesting or desirable or something to be encouraged or nurtured, but something to be abandoned. In one sutta, the Buddha talks about dealing with unskillful thoughts, persistent unskillful thoughts, and he gives various methods. And one of them has to do with this quality of perception. In that he says you can perceive them as something loathsome, as if a man had something disgusting hung around his neck, like the rotting carcass of an animal. He would immediately perceive it as undesirable, unwanted, and fling it away from himself. So it should be with thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and of harming. These three defilements are singled out. You might ask why delusion is not included in this list. I think it's often the list of unwholesome states is given this way. I think because delusion, although it's one of the roots, is harder to know or perceive, because when you are in a state of delusion, your perception is already muddled. But you can still, I think, it's still possible to perceive that, to know and perceive that the mind is in a confused state, at least some of the time, and then cut through it by perceiving this as confusion. Even, this sometimes occurs to meditators, that they can fall, particularly a certain stage, not quite a raw beginner, but someone who's still fairly new to the practice. They can reach a state where the mind is very confused and muddled and almost hallucinating. And this will pass in time, but you can accelerate the process by just occasionally noting, this is confusion, and letting those moments of clarity cut through the fog of delusion and gradually restore the mind to balance. So in terms of meditation practice, developing this perception is a matter of vigilance. That the meditator should be always on alert and awake and clear, and see these unwholesome states when they first arise, and they're very nascent beginning, they're quite shaky and weak. But if we and we can abandon them easily if we notice them clearly at the first arising. But if we're not mindful and we let them grow and develop into a whole mental structure, then they're much harder to deal with. So this kind of vigilance, this is also a form of perception. And so we're perceiving the flow of the mind, and we're perceiving whether the states that arise are skillful or unskillful. The Buddha talked about, he gave the comparison of sorting pebbles. You have a big pile of black and white pebbles, and you're sorting them into black on one side and white on the other. And this is like knowing the mind states, whether they're wholesome or unwholesome, and dealing with them accordingly. And this also has the benefit of developing an inner perception that we perceive and are clear about our own mind states, that we're shining the light inwardly and seeing what's going on in the mind. And this is really the essence of Vipassana meditation. So that's the perception of abandonment. And let's go to the chat and deal with questions and answers. Oh, someone's in Poland says it's exactly midnight here. Wow. Okay. I'm glad you're able to stay up for it. Someone from Thailand. Okay, here's a question. During metta meditation, I have more or less intense physical feeling in my solar plexus. Is that the heart chakra? What exactly is that? How does it work? And what is the relation to metta? Yeah, the heart chakra is actually, I think, higher than the solar plexus. It's like the middle of the chest. The solar plexus is one chakra down. It's Manipura. So I would advise if you can to try and draw that physical feeling upwards into the middle of the chest. You should begin the meditation by centering your consciousness there. But it may be that you need to open that chakra before the heart chakra becomes fully open. But you can work with that, bring that feeling, try to visualize that as light, and the light is shining upwards and activating the heart chakra. Philosophical question, if I may. Do you think true infinite encompasses all that is or ever will be anywhere, or is it a domain that is never endingly expanding, in the latter case new events? I don't think we can know that. That's one of the Abhyakata Dhammas. The questions that the Buddha said are unanswerable. One of them is whether the universe is bounded or unbounded, which is essentially the meaning of your question. And it's a sort of reflection. It's not only can we not really ever know the answer to, it's also of no real value. It doesn't matter to you, to your day-to-day experience or to your meditation practice, that whether the universe is bounded or unbounded. Okay, same questioner is continuing here. Maybe something more. Okay, this is quoting from um, uh, number one, everyone, or no one, everyone, I guess. That that have not yet arisen keep being manifest. It means this model is not all encompassing and there's a sense of lack or imperfection. It is also subject to time and Nietzsche, where the former model goes beyond the dimensionality of space and time and is subject to neither. It is everywhere yet devoid of specific spatial and temporal location. Nothing new is popping up. It is empty. Um, yeah. Okay, that doesn't really change what I said so much, uh, except that you bring in the question of the nature of time, and this is a question that the nature of time was a question that was much debated in the early days of Buddhism, and is the principal uh, point of diversion of division between the Theravada and the Sarvastivada. So, without prejudging the issue, the controversy was held that the Sarvastivadis held that all exists. That's the meaning of the name of Sarvastivada. It means everything exists. In Pali, it would be Sabha-ata. That past, present, and future uh, all have the same ontological status. And our consciousness only perceives one moment at a time, but they all exist. Whereas the Theravada, which at that time, at the time of the Third Council, they were known by the name of the Vibhajavadins, which means the school of analysis or the school of discrimination, because they discriminated between past, present, and future. And they said only the present is real, only the present exists. The past and future are non-existent. So both positions were held by different schools of early Buddhism. Lester says, yes, you're right, it is above the solar plexus. Okay. Greetings, Ajahn from Sweden. I heard the Buddha never taught meditation to lay people. Instead, he taught them virtue and karma. Why didn't he teach them meditation also, do you think? I'm not sure if that's true. He gave talks to he gave talks to assembly of lay people that that did include the three phases of the path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So that would encompass meditation. So I think that's a simplification. He often he always one thing that we see in the Buddhist suttas that he always adapted his discourse to suit the assembly, and often when he was speaking to a heterogeneous mix of lay people, he would emphasize sila and dana. But not always, because there were many actually lay people in the Buddhist time who managed to attain stream entry and even Sakadagami. So this would mean that they had to have practiced some meditation. Ajahn, you Tijaniya says we cannot observe moha delusion directly, but we can observe its activities. What do you think? I think that, yeah, I would agree with that technically that's true, because at the moment when moha is present in the mind, there can be no mindfulness. So on a kind of momentary scale, we're either being mindful or we're being confused. We can't really be mindful of confusion, but um, if we take it over a period of time rather than on a momentary basis, if we take it over a period of minutes or hours, in a mind that's gripped by delusion, there may be moments of clarity when you can cut through, and that will, if you seize that opportunity and notice, this is moha, this is confusion, even though at that precise moment there is no confusion in the mind, but the you're seeing, as you say, the activities. So you're seeing kind of retroactively the confusion that will cut through the confusion and reduce it. Okay, more about the time question. Like when a movie is sitting on a hard drive, it's fully there, but it's not being played. All of it is there at the same time, but nothing is manifesting. It's sort of outside of time to some extent. Yes, yeah, that's certainly true for a video file on a hard drive, but the question is whether the universe works like that or not. And um, that's hard to judge that. Like I say, there's cases to be made on both sides of that question. Does watching YouTube videos and reading books hinder progress on the path towards stream entry? Well, it depends on what books and videos you're watching. Um, and it's certainly, you will never get to stream entry just by reading or listening to Dhamma. You have to actually practice it. Bante, how do we know if we have attained stream entry? Yes, that is actually an excellent question, and something uh, everyone should be aware of. Because there is a lot of false breakthroughs. All that glitters is not gold. You can have many strong experiences in meditation, and some of them can seem quite bright and joyful, but they're not necessarily stream entry. The traditional way of testing yourself is to examine the mind, and not just casually and not just once, but again and again over time, for the presence of the three fetters, the three low fetters. That is Sakaya Ditti, Silabata Paramasa, and Wicikitcha. So the first thing, if to do that, of course, is to do some study and understand what those fetters mean. You can't rely really on the common English translations of which are personality view, right and ritual clinging, and skeptical doubt. Those are pretty rough translations. They don't really explain what's meant by those states well enough. Because if you have attained stream entry, those three states will disappear and not arise again. They're gone. They're utterly eradicated, made like a palm tree stump. So that's the thing to do to check whether an experience represents stream entry or not, is by the results. So what is the change in the mind afterwards? How can I reconcile multiple teachings within the same tradition, e.g., Thai Buddhism, and across different Theravada traditions? Oh, well, you shouldn't let yourself be bothered by that. You don't feel like you need to decide, and and take a stance and say this is right and everything else is wrong. And try to keep an open mind and listen to all the different teachings. I think, an example of that is from a previous question about the nature of time. I cited the divergent views of the Theravada and the Sarvastivada, and I see uh, some benefit in looking at things from either one of those perspectives. And I don't feel a strong need to decide which is correct. This is a form of vicikiccha, of skeptical doubt or uncertainty, is being bothered by different interpretations and feeling that you need to decide. You don't really need to decide. You can keep your mind open. How important is our mental state at the moment of dying? How much can it influence our next rebirth? It's actually critically important, but it itself is determined by the way you've lived your life. So you can't. It's not like you can live a heedless life and then just when you're dying suddenly turn your mind to the Dhamma and take a good rebirth. You have to condition your mind all through your life, and then when you're dying, wholesome things will arise. If you were given advice to lay person towards attainment of stream entry, how would you recommend? I follow the 5 Sila and meditate sometimes and read suttas and Buddhist philosophy. What can I do? Well, that's really the correct thing. The Sila Samadhi Panya. Keep Sila, meditate, and reading suttas to develop Panya. I would add one specific aspect towards on the Panya side. What can help more than anything is developing more and more of a perception. Again, we go back to perception. Develop a perception of emptiness and not self. Understanding anatta or not self is critical for stream entry, but it's like the concept of a mathematical asymptote. It's a mathematical equation that if you graph it, it gets infinitely closer to zero, but it never reaches zero. That's for a patujana or an unenlightened person to understand stream entry is like that. Only a stream winner can fully understand not self or anatta, but the patujana can get closer and closer, and to the degree that it makes that leap over to zero, to break the asymptote and reach the y-axis. It makes it easier. So try to develop a cognitive and a perceptual understanding approach to emptiness and not self. And that will serve you in good stead. Ajahn Martin says to see hell, we must go into Upachara Samadhi and ask to see hell. Is that true? I haven't heard that before, and I don't know why you would want to see hell. I wouldn't recommend it. There may be some benefit in seeing the higher realms, but I don't know why you would want to impose that on your consciousness. Can you comment upon the importance of walking meditation? And would that help to cultivate a certain type of samadhi? And also, can mantra meditation be good for samatha and jhana? Thank you. Walking meditation is very important. In Thailand, they call it Jongkram, walking Jongkram, and they do it a lot. The Buddha recommended walking meditation. There's a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya about the benefits of walking meditation. And one of the benefits is that the samadhi developed while walking lasts a long time. And this is true because it's actually somewhat more difficult to develop deep samadhi while walking because obviously there's more going on. But then if you take that samadhi and sit with it, but then if you take that samadhi and sit with it, it will the sit will be very much stronger. So one important factor to really help your meditation with walking meditation is the transition between walking and sitting needs to be done very mindfully. Don't make it an abrupt thing. Try and maintain the meditation while changing postures into the sitting posture and take that samadhi with you, and your sit will be much better. So this means if you have a limited amount of time for meditation, it's really often most beneficial to start with some walking meditation and then sit down. As for mantras, in Thailand, the Thai forest tradition, they often use the Budo mantra, and some other Thai traditions use longer mantras like Samma Arahang. So mantra is doesn't have some appearance in Theravada, but of course it's more associated with Tibetan Buddhism. They have a whole repertoire of mantras to do. It is a form of samatha meditation on sound. So yeah, it's a skillful practice. I have many defilements and have done many evil things. How can I burn off the bad karma? Well, you can't really burn off you can't really burn off the bad karma, so to speak, but you can kind of bury it or push it to the back by making good karma. The only way that the karma, old karma, is finally eliminated is either the results are experienced, which you don't really want, or by attaining stream entry. Then old karmas are diminished. The stream winner can never go to hell, for example. What are your thoughts on many scholars claiming the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path were probably systematized by later scholarly monks? I don't buy into that because they're so central to the teaching. I can't see. I mean, some things probably were systematized, and I think you can see that signs of that in many suttas in the Anguttara and even in the Samyutta. But the Four Truths and Eightfold Path are so central and really the core of the teaching. I can't see them as being a later invention. If we're able to see hell, can we help our loved ones get out of hell? No. At least in the Theravada tradition, there's no way to help anybody if they've fallen all the way to hell. You can help them if they're in the ghost realm, but if they're in hell, they're stuck there until their karma runs out. Is there a state of perception where things are not named, direct experience? Is it possible to have this permanently? I don't know about permanently. I doubt it really, but because perception is so tied in with the naming process. But I think we can perceive things directly and immediately. Is there information in Pali Canon about the difference of Buddha and Sawaka paths? Yeah, there is. Not in the canon, but in an early post-canonical work, the pre-commentary. So it's very old work. It's I can't remember the name of it now, but it deals with the taking of the Bodhisattva vow in Theravada, which is different than as it's understood in Mahayana. In Theravada, the Bodhisattva vow means that you're taking a vow to practice for Buddhahood uh, instead of for arahantship. So a practical result of that is you would not attain stream entry. You would instead perfect the paramis, and it takes many, many lifetimes. And the only reason, according to this text, the only reason someone would do that is infinite compassion, because it's such a more difficult path, but it benefits so many more beings. And it's also stated, I think, elsewhere that if one makes a vow to practice for Buddhahood, that vow only becomes binding when it's made before a living Buddha. And then that really sets the person on the Bodhisattva path, formally and officially. Are there any examples of lay people doing meditation in the suttas? There are. Usually it's associated with following the Uposatha vows, and then they'll sit all, take the Uposatha vows and sit all night. And there's several examples of that. Okay, I'll take a couple more and then we'll stop. When we are having a dream, we are not often aware we're dreaming and will experience a range of consequences, both during and after waking up, whether the dream content was positive or waking life as well. We experience the consequences of our actions prior to the present moment for many, many years before, but was before real, just as I made illusion to be abandoned. Well, whether it's an illusion or not, it's we should abandon our attachment to our experiences, and just be aware of them as, you know. And then we don't have to make a metaphysical decision as to their ontological status, whether they're real or not. The consequences are real in any case, and just be cognizant of that and pay more attention to what you're doing going forward. Are there stories about the Pacceka Buddhas questioning each other's practice when they meet up in the Himawa? Yes, yeah, that's the standard thing when a new Pacceka Buddha arrives up at their cave in the Himawa. They ask him, Venerable Sir, what was your practice? What was your meditation object? Okay, I'll take two more and then we're done. You talked about the practice of centering yourself in the chitta and described it as being aware of being aware. Is this the same as sati? Does the Buddha talk about this quality in the suttas? Yeah, that's sati. Now, being remembering to be present is the way I like to describe sati. And yeah, the Buddha does talk about it. It often stresses the importance of sati, of mindfulness. I don't think he uses I don't recall any sutta where he uses quite the same language as we see in the Thai forest tradition, but he's definitely talking about the same thing. Okay, one more. I read one sutta that says devas go to hell after having spent their karma in heaven. Yeah, that can happen. Is it not the case they can make new karma in heaven? A deva can be reborn into any realm. They can fall back to heaven, or to earth, or they can be reborn in heaven, or they can go to hell. If they fall to hell, it's because of some old karma that previously has not yet manifested. It's not. It wouldn't be for anything they've done in the heaven worlds. The Dewas would never be involved in any evil deeds of that magnitude. Usually, they just idle their time away in sense pleasures. But there's some minority of Dewas are wiser and they take an interest in the Dhamma, and it's possible for them even to take a higher rebirth. Okay, so I'll leave it there for this week, and we'll see you again next week. Bye all.